Thank you for tuning in to Matters of the Heart Radio Live with your host, biblical counselor and author, Ms. Wendy. We want to hear from you today. Call into the show at 469-844-5152. You can also chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in your player to send us a message. Now, here's your host, Ms. Wendy.
Hello and welcome to Matters of the Heart radio show. What a joy to have the opportunity to spend some time with you today talking about investments. You know, we all invest. We invest in ourselves or we don't, and we invest in others or we don't. But to some degree or another, we all tend to do both, whether it's investing recreationally, educationally, spiritually, or anything else. We do invest in ourselves. My question for you today is, are you intentionally investing in yourself to help accomplish that dream that God has put in your heart? And are you investing your life in others and having a sense of accomplishment so that you too, at the end of your life's journey, when you meet your Maker and when you see the Lord face to face, so that you too will hear those wonderful words, "Well done, my very good and faithful servant." That's what we're talking about on the show today. And before we kick off, let's say hello to the producer, Christine. Thanks for joining me today on the show.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
So, Christine, we just had Thanksgiving last week. Did you have a good time? Did you eat turkey?
Yes, I had a fantastic time. I enjoyed seeing my family. I enjoyed being able to spend time with both my parents, and I enjoyed spending time with my extended family.
That's good. I'm so glad. So did you eat too much or not enough?
I ate so much I was miserable. My dad cooked a really good non-traditional meal, and I ate so much. I was just absolutely miserable and just almost fell asleep on their couch.
So you said a non-traditional meal. What do you mean? What did he cook?
He made ham, brisket, turkey. He made his own barbecue sauce, and they did some sides, and he made a French silk pie, which I should not have eaten. And did anyway, and was so miserable. I just had to undo the top button of my my pants for the first time in a long time.
Well, that sounds like a good time. Well, we had a great time too, and it was a lot of fun. Ours was a little different because I had to do all the cooking, and I did traditional cooking.
Tell me about it.
Well, I didn't cook everything that your dad did, but I did make 2 turkeys. I smoked one and I cooked one, and they were good. And lots of sides and stuffing and all of the great things that the kids love, and my parents and all that kind of good stuff. And then we went out and sat on the patio and lit a fire and listened to music and sang. We sang a lot of Christmas songs. We were talking about what our favorite Christmas songs were, and we did that. And then we danced. Does that sound crazy to you? Does it sound crazy to dance on Thanksgiving?
I know you. Nothing sounds too crazy, least of all dancing. Dancing and music is very much the soul and center of your gatherings.
I know, it is. And so my uncle, who's very ill, was here, and he too loves to dance and sing. So we were just having a fantastic time. But I have to tell you, there was a little bit of sorrow that hit my heart yesterday as I was talking to my mom, and my uncle is her brother. And he has dementia, and it's just the onset of dementia, but he doesn't even remember being here.
Oh, that is sad.
Yeah, that kind of hurt my heart because I had such a good time with him, and he doesn't remember being here.
I think it's a bittersweet thing. It's beautiful when he is present and when he is able to share time with you all and be very present and in the moment and laugh and recollect things. But it's just kind of sad that he's not able to recollect them after the fact.
That it doesn't stay. So that was kind of a bittersweet thing for me. I enjoyed having everyone here at my house because we gathered at my house, but I was really wanting to make it special for him because he has been so sick. And I had such a wonderful time with him. However, I was sad to find out yesterday that I guess it had been about 3 days or so, but he was confused. He kept thinking my mom was going to the nursing home to pick him up so that they could come over. And she said, "No, we've already been there and done that." And he said, "We have?" She said, "Yes." He said, "I don't remember. Are you sure?" And she said, "Yes." And she said, "She sent you some pictures. Look at them and maybe you'll remember." But, oh, that kind of hurt.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know that dealing with his illness is difficult and painful sometimes anyway, but to share such a wonderful time and have him be so central to that, and then to kind of only recollect that within your own mind and not to continue to share that memory with him is got to be difficult. And I'm sure even just thinking about him and the fact that he doesn't recollect having such a good time himself is probably a hard thing to have to move forward with.
Well, I tell you, it was a sweet time, but that really was a bittersweet element to it. Anyhow, I hope that you too, my friend, had a wonderful Thanksgiving and enjoyed your family and enjoyed the time that you were able to spend with them. I hope that you made some really great memories and were intentional with how you spent your time. So that's what we're talking about on the show today. We're talking about how intentional we are in investing in ourselves. You know, we have one life to live, unless you know something I don't. We typically have one life and we get to spend it. And the other day I left the office and I was thinking, and I said it out loud. As a matter of fact, I think I even posted it on Facebook. I spent my life really well today. Every day we have an opportunity to spend ourselves. It's not just the money and the time, but it's ourselves. It's our emotional energy. It's everything, all that encompasses us. And I wonder, how many times do we go home from work or from whatever we're doing in a day, and we feel satisfied, really satisfied in our soul with how we've invested our life that day?
I thought it was a very powerful thing that you talked about when you did say that. And we'd been talking after you got finished with that day, and you said that. You said, I had this day and I'm glad the way that I spent it. But it was just the way that you had phrased it. It just really made me think, you're given a day every single day to spend however you want to spend it. And it's God's gift to you. And if you invest in it well and you spend it well, you can look back on the day and be happy of the way you spent your day and the way you invested in your day. And I thought it just came to me in a really potent way, the way you phrased that about you have a day to spend. It's yours to spend however you want, but how do you want to invest in it to make it a good day?
Right. I spent my life well, I think is what I said. And that's not going to come back to me. And so it's essential to spend it well. And I was so tired that night. Things at the office had been particularly busy, and so I was really tired. But it's wonderful to go to bed tired knowing that you have done really well with how you spent your life, because you're not going to get it back. So that's what we're talking about today. Christine, what are ways that you like to invest in yourself? You listen, you don't know all of the questions I have lined up for you, my dear little guinea pig.
I'm going to tell on myself and make myself sound really like an awful person, which is exactly why your therapy and love is needed. Invest. I guess the caustic remark would be like, I love indulging in myself, but if you're really talking about investing, it's different than, I think, wasting time. You can say I can be self-indulgent, but am I creating an investment? For me, that's a really good question. My first thought when I think about investing in the day my thought is immediately what I do for others, or what I can do for others. There's something that I was told recently was investing in myself would be taking that time in my schedule, which can get somewhat hectic. I won't compare it to yours, but it can get somewhat hectic for me. And she told me, you need to just take some time for you where you just rest from all of that. And it's a way of kind of investing in you and refilling your cup, but then that lets you pour it out to others.
I agree. And I think it's so important to be able to stop and take a moment to take care of yourself, because in essence, that's kind of what you're doing and what we're talking about. I think that when I look at when I question how I invest in myself, for me, part of that would be walking or running or riding my bike, because I feel better when I do. I feel more energetic, all of those good things. I feel like I'm taking good care of my body. But also investing in relationships is key. We had a good time doing that yesterday, didn't we?
Well,
you got us lost, kind of. Is that right?
The most magnificent thing that you said about 5 minutes into our happy long journey, which you were not saying so much toward the end of it, was
on foot,
in
heels,
30 minutes out of a 5-minute journey, what should have been a 5-minute journey. Oh, this is going to be an adventure. This is so fun. This is just like Italy, and yay, and we'll make it happen. And not so much 35 minutes later when we found it was across the street where we parked.
I know. But all of the laughs at the end once it was over, it's amazing how a collection of times just like that really do make good deposits in the relationships that we have. I think it's essential that we do invest well in those relationships that matter most to us, and that we're not negligent of them, because then we tend to turn around and find ourselves lonely and wondering why. Yet oftentimes it feels easier to wait on someone else to do the effort or put the effort into the relationship, rather than stretching ourselves and being the one to initiate, or being the one to really be intentional in investing in the relationship.
I think it's also a lot about attitude, which is something I'm learning. And it's, your attitude can help create a larger investment, or it can diminish that investment. And just like the experience we had yesterday could have been, although it was tough and it was aggravating, I'm sure, and a little bit tiring, if the attitude is not good, or at least trying to be positive, then it can really turn into a rough experience, a negative one, a bad one. It just diminishes the entire time that you could have spent investing, and becomes a negative investment instead of a positive one.
Definitely. So let's encourage our friend that's listening. Invest well, invest your energy, and spend your life well. Today will be over, and your opportunity to spend today, to spend your life, will be gone. And then you'll begin again tomorrow. And it's important that you do it with what matters to you, with that sense of destiny, of purpose, and what God has called you to do as well. One other thing that I also do to invest is I read. I really enjoy reading and investing in myself spiritually and emotionally, gathering resources that will help me to grow in my understanding of God's word, of application, and then also in being a better helper for those that come to my office for counseling.
I really need to do that more myself. I do like to read, and I almost exclusively these days read nonfiction theological books, and I don't do that nearly often enough. And I'm always, what's the word? I always wish I were a better disciplined person at that, because I know you always, generally almost every single morning, take the time to do that. My mom forever has done that, and to at least read the Bible. And I thought, man, that's really good spiritual investment. And I know it is, because when I do it, man, you have a much stronger day
Right.
and a much more spiritual outlook. And I know that's an excellent investment and something that I need to strive to be more disciplined at. Because, I mean, what is your outlook in the day without that versus with it? I mean, where do you see that investment pay off?
Well, for me personally, I live a life where a lot of people are counting on me. They're counting on me to be very discerning, to be able to help encourage them, to help sift through their problems, to find the hope, to give them tools and resources so that they can overcome difficulties. That's professionally. Personally, I have 4 children. That right there. I mean, it takes a lot of energy, and it is so important to me, to do it really well. They're all still at home, although I have one in college. They're all still at home, and I realize that the time is ticking. I only have so long to where I can really influence their life every day under the same roof. And I really want to do well in this part of my life. So it takes a lot of energy there as well. And if I've spent time with the Lord, then I can receive His love. I can receive His wisdom. I can receive His peace. It fine-tunes my ability to discern. And then when people come to pull on me and kind of pick my fruit, or the fruit of my tree, then it gives me something to offer, compared to if I don't, which doesn't happen very often, but if I delay, even for me, it's not so much whether or not I do or I don't, but even if I delay and I don't start off that way, I just don't have that same measure of peace about myself and that outlook of confidence that I know that God is with me and I can face whatever the day brings.
I think that sounds like not only are you investing in something that deepens your spiritual walk and the things that you get from God, but it in turn is a favor to those with whom you are interacting and becomes an investment on some level with them and their relationship to you, because you're able in turn to give them a little bit better quality investment than you would have if you hadn't, or even maybe a negative investment if you don't.
Definitely. And it's important to me to be able to do my best for them, whomever they may be. So as a counselor, sitting with someone hour after hour, it takes a lot of patience and a lot of grace to listen and to search, to do the things that I do. So I really attribute that to the grace of God on my life, but I really attribute it as well to that time spent in the secret, in the quiet place, where I incline my ear to His voice and my heart where it's wide open so that I can receive from Him, so that then I can turn around and invest in others.
Yeah, my mom had said something really, I thought it was right on, and I thought, oh, this just means I really need to buckle down and start doing that and investing that time. Is that she said, it helps me it calls Jesus to mind more often during the day. And I thought, if I'm more contemplative in that regard of Him coming to mind, especially when I'm facing situations, and the more I would practice at that, the situations I face, if He comes to mind in that moment, my reaction in that situation can be more in line with what He would want. And the more often you do that and make it a practice, the more often you are able to invest that way, and then perhaps even grow in that and give a bigger and bigger investment in a wise and godly way.
Definitely. And I think I could say close to every day, I will face some situation in which whatever I read that morning in God's Word, or a study aid that I may have, will be applicable, and the answer is right there. And it's not hard, and I'm not racking my brains trying to figure it out. God had already made the way, and as I set that time aside for Him, He's given me answers for what I'm going to face. And wow, what a grace. And I think about it as I go throughout the day, and it comes back to me. His Word comes back to me, and I'm thinking, thank you, Lord, because you knew again today that I was going to need this word. Let's take a quick commercial and come back and talk about investments.
Are you suffering from a past hurt? Lingering pains can inhibit your potential to be all that God has in store for you in your life. As a biblical counselor, Miss Wendy has written Healing Waters, a 21-day workbook which offers well-thought-out steps to emotional recovery. Making use of hands-on activities, prayers, and meditation on Scripture, Miss Wendy helps build faith and develop patterns that establish lifelong vitality. Why not take that step to the healthy, whole, God-filled individual you're meant to be? Go to mattersoftheheartradio.org to order your copy today. That's mattersoftheheartradio.org.
We want to hear from you today. Call into the show at 469-844-5152. You can also chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in your player to send us a message. Now, here's your host, Ms. Wendy.
Well, I hope that you're enjoying the show today as we talk about investments and the importance of investing in ourselves and then turning around and investing our lives in others. There's a story in Matthew chapter 25. In Matthew chapter 25 that I want to read from to encourage us today, because I know that we too want to hear the Lord as we meet Him face to face when our time here on earth is done, and we really examine and reevaluate how we spent our days collectively, how we spent what He gave us, and we look at the eternal reward and we look at His eyes to hear what He has to say. I want to hear Him say, "Well done, Wendy, my very good and faithful servant." So let's look at the scripture from Matthew chapter 25. Okay, beginning at verse 14, and we're going to go down to 30. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. "Master," he said, "you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more." The master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." The man with 2 bags of gold also came. "Master," he said, "you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more." The master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. "Master," he said, "I knew that you are a hard man, investing where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you." His master replied, "You wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest." So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them and throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Truly, the Lord has left each one of us with our own bag, our own riches, which would look like talents and wisdom and gifts that He's given each one of us. The question today is, what are we doing with them? Are we living life in such a way that we can say, I've spent it well, Master, when He returns? Should He come in the twinkling of an eye? And I'm not going to get into theology here, but should He come in the twinkling of an eye? Can you look at Him and not be ashamed? Can you say, Lord, you gave me the gift of mercy, and here I've served you in this capacity among the sick? Can you say, Lord, you gave me the gift of intercession, and here are those that I have interceded for. Look, my Lord. If you say, Lord, you have given me an abundance of riches as far as money is concerned, monetary value, can you say, and here are those that were hungry that I fed, and naked and that I clothed? It's important that we are all investing well and using the gifts and the talents that God has given us, because the day will come when we meet Him and we see Him face to face.
That's part of what's written in Scripture, and what always I've had discussions with people about the Last Judgment, where He is separating those out who even had proclaimed they were doing stuff for Him, but really it was not. And about being there on the last day and what you have, and even Christ's own words of, when you've done everything that you do and have done it all, say, we're unworthy. We've just done what you gave for us to do. We're unprofitable servants. We did what we were asked to do, because you're doing God's work, and don't think that that won't be rewarded in the end. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a very powerful thing to me. Is one of the things I always think about. The reference that you gave earlier is, what would you, a very popular television show host who interviews celebrities asks them that, what would you like God to say if heaven exists? And that was always what I would answer. I have thought about that, and I thought, when I get to the end of my life, what I would like to hear God say is, well done, my good and faithful servant.
Mm-hmm. I love the word faithful there, because that means that the servant didn't quit. They were faithful. They remained steadfast. They could have quit. All of us can quit, but remaining steadfast translates into a faithful servant, not someone who's haphazardly invested. This morning I woke up with this thought in my mind. It's either all in or all out. And I have a really good friend who reminds me of that on Facebook. Actually, he says all in or all out. And how many of us are really all in? How many of us really believe that the Master is going to come back, and we will give an account for how we have spent our days?
And that's kind of what I was thinking when I'm talking about the servants who just say, we're unprofitable servants. We did what was our duty. We don't own any of that. Mm-hmm. None of that, the graces or the gifts, or like the parable that you tell, that those bags of money or the talent that God gave each one of those servants was not theirs. Mm-hmm. It was not theirs to begin with. Mm-hmm. It was never belonged to them. And the beautiful thing I think about that is that at the end of all of that, they come back with what was given to them and bestowed upon them by the Master, and said, this has borne fruit because mm-hmm. you used me to increase this investment of your gifts, and they have doubled and so forth, because I participated in the grace that you gave me mm-hmm. to do this work.
Yeah, and it's such a privilege and such a blessing to be able to serve God. And not only is it the gifts and talents, but it's our children. What will I say when I answer for how I have raised them. Here they are, Lord. You gave me this little bundle of joy. Now I've given you someone who is a faithful steward of your word. I've given you someone who is operating and using their gifts and talents wisely because I taught them. Here's one who knows how to pray because I taught them. It's what we do for a living and how we earn money. It's the clients that you've given me, Lord, those that I was able to care for. I give them back. You gave them to me this way. I give them back to you that way. It's with our honeys, with those that we love, that we're married to. I thank you for letting me borrow them for a time, because everyone is borrowed. Everyone is borrowed. Sometimes they're borrowed for a week. Sometimes they're borrowed for 10 years, some for 50, but they're only borrowed, and then we give them back. In grief, I think sometimes that's one of the hardest things that I've seen people go through as they grieve the loss of a loved one, because they feel like they could have done better, that they didn't do well in loving and who they're giving back to God. And that's sad. That's hard.
I think that's one of the things in my faith tradition, is that they talk about marriage being a call to the ministry, is a vocation. In my faith, they call it a vocation as well into marriage. And you have a vocation as a married person to, foster this gift that you've been given, this role that you've been given in life. It's a holy obligation to be in that position of being married to somebody. And I think that's an awful serious way to look at that, because it's not just a casual something you enter into. It's something you treat with a sacred reverence, and what you give to that and what you give to your partner and how you build each other up in that investment you make in your marriage. That's what it calls to mind for me, is just this huge, huge sacred responsibility, because a lot is being asked of you in raising your kids and having your partner. And then at the end of your life, there's going to be a lot that you need to, you're
going to account. You're going to account for how you stewarded their hearts, how you stewarded their lives, and even our parents, how well do we care for them? There's no such thing as a perfect parent. We would all love to think that there are, and we dream of a perfect parent situation. But the longer I live, the more I realize there is no such thing. There are really good parents, and I'm trying to be one of those. But the reality is that at some point you didn't do enough for someone, or you could have done better according to them, probably. But do you still lay down your life and love them as they age? Do you still invite them to eat dinner? Do you make sure they have enough money for gas or for medicine? It's important that we do take care of them. We are stewards of everything that God gives us, of everyone that He allows us to borrow, and the gifts and talents and the abilities He's given to us. I
think that one of the things that I think of too, and that it's one of those things that I think about, like with my parents, and it's, my parents were awful young when they had me, and I don't look back. I really, really, really don't look back and say, well, you screwed me up here, you screwed me up here, you screwed me up here. I don't look at it like that, because ultimately what I was given, which came primarily through my mother and then later through my father, is a great faith and a beautiful belief in God. How could I take away from my childhood anything other than primarily pointing back to that and go, I know God because of my parents. Mm-hmm. I know who He is because of them. And, I made plenty of mistakes in my own life, and I don't think I look back and say, well, I was 40, years old, and it's because of you that I'm doing this. I'm responsible for myself, and mm-hmm. It's the great investments that they put into me, like faith and morals and manners and things like that are bearing that fruit now. I'm a late blooming tree, but they're bearing fruit now.
You're so funny. So yes, as we talk about investing in ourselves and taking that time to really, let's see, I wrote it down here how I wanted to say it, to really redefine, recreate, and recharge, it's important that we slow down long enough to think about what we're doing and not to allow the direction of the wind to direct the way that we're going to go. So oftentimes we can mindlessly wander and then wonder how we got to where we're at. Yet we don't slow down enough to really put some thought into what God is calling us to do, what it's going to take to make it happen, and then to remain faithful to see it all the way through until the Lord changes the call or the direction. Because sometimes it's those quiet times when things are not happening the way that you had dreamt that they would, that makes you want to quit. Well, the quitter will not hear that word, faithful. There's no room for quitting. You know, one thing I think about when I want to quit is I think about how Jesus didn't quit all the way to the end. And the same Spirit dwells in me that rose him from the dead. But I think the same Spirit that also allowed him to carry through obediently all the way to the end, the will of his Father, of our Father. And Jesus says, follow after me. Follow through all the way to the end. Yeah. So as we think about that, I want you to know that you have the power that it takes to do what God has called you to do. And we want to travel the road of least regrets as freely and easily as possible as we look down the road and we think, well, I can go this way and this may happen, or I can go that way and that may happen. Which road really holds an amount of least regrets for you? I think that's a really wise piece of advice to take, because so many times we go for the here and now and we're not thinking a little further down the road. But thinking a little further down the road is not only prudent, but it's wise. No comment?
Oh, how often that other road looked so inviting.
Right.
I think it's not even so much that you usually get in, or at least I do, usually get into a situation. I'm like, but this looks like a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. This looks a lot more inviting. You know, it's that nice, broad, easy, gently sloping downward path instead of this narrow, rockier, upward path that you know you should be taking. And I think the more you get into the wide, easily downward sloping path, I think if you have that investment that was given to you of a good moral, theological, spiritual, faithful life, the more hopefully your gut starts eating away at you and you realize it might look fun, it might look nice, it might look good, but it's not bearing fruit. It's not bearing fruit for my life. It's not bearing fruit for anybody else. Mm-hmm. And it's like what you said, where you finally get so far down it, you're like, wait a minute, how did I get over here? What was I doing over here where I was wasting time and it wasn't with God? And you find yourself on a very fruitless and a very kind of unfulfilled, I think, place.
You know, the Word of God tells us all things are possible, but not all things are profitable. And we want to do those things that are profitable. We want to make those wise decisions and wise investments with our lives. The truth is that the world needs you. People need you. The people that are in your sphere of influence need you. And God wants each one of us to make a difference with the talents that He's put in our hands. So let's take a quick commercial break and talk about what that looks like.
Matters of the Heart Radio. Matters of the Heart radio show is a part of the only Christian radio station in Pakistan. Miss Wendy has the opportunity to share the gospel message there, and you have the opportunity to help. For a donation of any amount, you can help her to continue to bring this ministry to the people of Pakistan. For a donation of only $6, they will receive a Bible in their own native language of Urdu. Simply go to mattersoftheheartradio.org and click on the donate button today. That's mattersoftheheartradio.org.
We want to hear from you today. Call into the show at 469-844-5152. You can also chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in your player to send us a message. Now, here's your host, Ms. Wendy.
Well, welcome back to the show. It's such a joy talking about and encouraging you to invest in yourself and to invest your life in others. God has such a need for us. We are here on purpose and with a purpose, and not doing what we were called to do, what we're destined for, what we're purposed for, easily leads to a life of discontentment and unease and dissatisfaction. God wants us to pursue Him passionately, and He wants us to pursue the call that He's placed on us, the dreams that He's put in our heart passionately as well. I want to begin to touch up on some of the things that we've talked about today. In investing in yourself, I want you to know that it's also really important to invest in resting. Now, we're just coming off of the Thanksgiving holiday break, and this was a big one for me. I had a whole day, and this is really uncommon for me, but I loved it. I had a whole day, which was Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, that I stayed in my bed all day, and I watched movies and I read and I enjoyed my kids in my room and had a fantastic time recharging. I wish I could say that I do that really often, but it's so far from the truth. But it is important that we rest and we do things that help us to recharge. Recharging physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Learning and growing is wise too. And then making sure that we're spending enough time in prayer. There's something to be said about silence and sitting quietly in the presence of God. I think it changes the pace that we live in, because our pace is like a microwave society. We're used to things happening quickly. We were talking yesterday over dinner about Michelangelo and because we went to see an art exhibit of his, and the amount of time that it took for him to accomplish those paintings. And it took him years and years and years. And now here we are, hundreds and hundreds of years later, looking at his artwork. And he became discouraged in his journey. But wow, what a strong finish. Who was the other person that you were telling me about over dinner? Wasn't there someone else?
I don't know. I'll need a little more information than that.
Well, I don't remember, but I thought that you had added to the story. But
I don't remember.
Let's think about seed. We all are like seed to a certain degree. We all carry a lot of potential. Unfortunately, it's rarely recognized by many, either because of laziness, lack of confidence, lack of passion, lack of belief. Belief is so key, and doubt robs us of so much. We doubt that God would call us to something great. We doubt that our gifts or talents or abilities matter. We doubt that God's going to be faithful, and or fear. We begin to become afraid of what following God would really mean, or what would we have to give up? Oh, nothing that He wouldn't give back or wouldn't be able to satisfy us with. Maybe something even better down the road.
I think the call to faithfulness is that call of trusting in Him and Him being able to give you what's better than what you could manage for yourself. And the things that when you see God's kingdom at work, when you see His hand at work in what you do by being faithful to what He's called you to, it's a magnificent reward in a miraculous way in some cases, because you can see how he works through you by your participation in the work he has for you and the works that he's prepared for you, and to see how magnificently he works in people's lives, even maybe not even in the miraculous, but to me, I've seen people's lives changed just because he was calling me to a position I thought, there's no way. I am not called to be a leader. I'm not called to lead this. I'm not called to lead that. I'm not that type of person in life. And to be faithful to where I felt like he was calling me in those positions has yielded a wonderful fruit. And there's nothing that I did that I feel like I did other than preparing myself, spending time with him in prayer to hear his will, and just acting on what he wanted and allowing him to work through me.
Mm-hmm. Because it really is about him. It really is about his grace and his power at work in us and through us. You know, in order for a seed to bear fruit or to become a tree, it must first be buried. And do you know that when it is in the depth of the soil, that it's dark and probably uncomfortable? And there are seasons in life that are like that for us as well. There are seasons of darkness when we cannot see what God is doing, when we cannot understand why he's doing what he's doing. But there is always a purpose. And as our seed, as we're planted in him and we allow our roots to grow down deep in him, in his love, in his wisdom, in his word, then we begin to become nurtured. And lo and behold, we break through the ground and he tends to us. He is a great gardener, and he waters us, and he allows the sunshine to warm us. It does not mean that the moon cannot come out at night and that there are not dark nights or cool times of coolness that may be uncomfortable. But as we continue to allow him to be that vine dresser and we abide in him, we truly will find that we're able to accomplish much with the time that we're given. And it's not always about us. It's not about our own strength, our own gifts, our own abilities. I love that saying that God doesn't call the qualified, but qualifies the called. And I really believe that to be true. God has a special plan for all of us, but just as he talks about the vine and abiding in him, his word is also true there, where he says that apart from me, you can do nothing. And he desires for us to abide in him. And he desires for us to partner with him in the work that he needs done here on earth.
You're much better at remembering the verse and chapter than I am, but I believe I know it's somewhere in Ephesians where it talks about that, and it talks about him.
John.
No, it's no. Ephesians. It's often quoted in statements of belief. I believe it's like 2:9, but the very next verse talks about walking in the work that God's prepared for us beforehand.
Yeah, the good works that were predestined.
Predestined for you. Mm-hmm. And even
I thought you were talking about the vine. I'm like, that's interesting.
No, look, I might be Catholic, but I do know my Bible a little bit. But Jesus himself talking about, you were grafted on. You weren't originally as a Gentile, but you are now a part of that vine. So you are now can share in that good work and in all the rewards that God has for you.
Yes, and we don't want to miss out. The truth is that there is an eternal reward that Satan is constantly trying to steal from us. He doesn't want us to go in and enjoy the goodness of the Lord when we take our last breath here and start our first one in eternity, where he can't rob us of it anymore. But it is true. We are to lay up for ourselves treasures in heaven. We are not to be solely focused on the trials, the tribulations, the difficulties of the times here on earth, because they're going to pass. They're going to flee. But it is important that we do leave a legacy, that we do leave a mark. I've said I want to leave my handprints and footprints all over the world, and I'm working hard at it every day so that I can look at him and not be ashamed and have a sense of accomplishment in that what you gave me, I give back to you with so much love, Lord. I serve you out of that place of love. Look here. Thank you for trusting me.
I think it sounds to me like it ultimately comes down to what you're investing in, and is it going to turn to dust and be temporal and come to nothing at the end of the world, at the end of all time, at the end of your life? It's either going to be dust or it's going to be treasure in heaven. And one of them is eternal, and all this temporal stuff that is so self-indulgent or whatever the case may be, it's all going to come to absolutely nothing if it is not from God.
And we want to line up our thinking with God and with his word. And if he says it's important and he is not a liar, then we need to say that it's important. He cares about the hungry. He cares about the poor. He cares about having the gospel spread all over the world. He cares about people in every nation of the world. And he wants each one of us to use what he's given us and not to squander it, not to do good because, oh, God's going to punish me. No, that's the wicked servant. No. But he wants us to do good out of our love for him as that good and faithful servant.
One of the things that I heard that I thought was most potent was at the end of your life, God doesn't send you to hell. God says, I love you so much, I will give you what you love most.
Whether it was him and what because he gives us the ability to choose, and he calls us, he beckons us unto himself. Yet it's true that oftentimes we can forsake him and be more caught up in our flesh, in the things that we want to do. And it's kind of like he's a second thought.
Yeah, you chose it.
And after the fact. Yeah. But then I wonder how many of us, I'm going to be looking for all of my near and dear friends and you, my friend that's listening, there around the throne. How many of us are going to say, we did it. You gave it to us and we did it. We love you. We worship you. We did it. Yes, it required some sacrifice. Yes, it required diligence. Yes, I didn't stay in bed and watch TV all day, every day. But look, thank you for counting me worthy.
I chose you. I chose you and I love you. And the eternal reward for that, instead of choosing something else, and that eternal separation forever, is that eternal joining with him and being in the beatific vision, in that countenance, and knowing you loved him and he loved you. And it's the perfection of that love realized in eternity.
Yes, and there's not really a better way to spend your time than to spend your time with the Lord and doing things for the Lord on purpose. And you could be cooking, and that's for the Lord, because the word says that whatever your hands find to do it with all of your heart in service to the Lord. That's paraphrased, but in essence, that's what he's saying. Do it with all of your heart and do it as unto the Lord. Yes, you may see a 2-year-old who needs their nose wiped and diaper changed and, something to eat for lunch. They're hungry again. Unto Jesus, if he was hungry, every time they're hungry, it's unto you, Lord, I fix this for them. Every time they need a bath, it's unto you. When your elderly husband or wife needs that dose of medication, needs help to the bathroom, your parents, it's unto you, Lord, it's unto you. It's unto you, Lord, it's unto you.
There's a couple of disciplines I know, very holy people, that talk about that, and then it's just like you said, it's unto you. Every time you do that little something, I'm sweeping the floor for love of God. I'm wiping that note for love of God. Everything you can do can be a sacrifice to God or an offering to God, and it bears repeating that, I think, especially difficult stuff.
Sure. And everything that we offer up to him is an offering. It may be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It may be sewing something for someone. It may be counseling them in my office. But it's unto you, Lord. It's unto you. It may be a phone call. It may be a written card. But it's unto you, Lord. It's unto you. Thank you. I love what we're talking about today because the world needs us. And it's not by coincidence that you're listening, my friend, whomever you are, whatever country you're listening in, at whatever time this show makes it to you. God has created you to make a difference on the earth. That's why you have breath today. That's why. You can pray. You can make a difference. You can teach. You can drive a car. Who knows what you're gifted with? But whatever it is that you're gifted with, invest it unto you, Lord, unto you. Let that be the song of your heart today. Unto you, Lord, unto you, because he's worthy. Do you ever think about just how much he's done for you? Just how much strength it took for Jesus to take another step as he carried his cross. Oh, wow. That's a lot to consider. It's so wonderful that in God's love, he doesn't just put us here for to exist with no purpose whatsoever. But no, he created us to exist with a dream in our heart, with a passion, and with a purpose. And I hope that this show encourages you today to seek out that purpose, to do the simple in worship to God, to do the grand in worship to God, but to do it all unto the Lord.
And with full love. I would have said just a willing heart.
Definitely. I love
God
that.
God loves a willing heart.
Yes. Yes. And if you don't have love, then you have nothing. What did Paul say? If I could speak with tongues of angels, if I could prophesy, I mean, he goes through a whole long litany. But if I don't have love, then what does it matter? Do it in love. Do it with love. That makes the difference. Sure, it may not always be easy, but if it were easy, everyone would be doing it.
The whole book of Romans, I think, which we could probably get into on another show.
I love it.
It's all about, I think the summation of it and what Paul says is they were just following the works of the law because they thought it would make them righteous. It wasn't out of love of God. It wasn't out of wanting to be close. It's because it was a religious regulation. That's why I'm doing this. And I think the contrast that he makes, at least in my reading of it, it's just to see that you can do now through faith and through grace. What you do is out of love, and if you do it out of love, such fruit comes out of it. It's not just the works of the law anymore, where it's just because I have to, and these works make me righteous. It's because out of love of God, the work that you do, it bears so much more, and it's so much more grace-filled, I think, and I love that.
Yes, I love it too. And even thinking about my own children, I don't love when they do things out of obligation. I mean, I like it, don't get me wrong. If I say, I expect you to clean the kitchen, I want them to clean the kitchen. But what I love is when they do things for me because they love me. I love you, Mom. I drew you this picture. Maybe I made up your bed. I did it because I love you, Mom. I love what you do for me. You know, it's like we do for our spouses. I do it for you because I love you. I'm thankful for what you do for me, but I do it for you because I love you. And there is power in love. Well, friend, I hope the show has encouraged you. What are you created for? What are you passionate about? How can I pray for you? Visit me on the web at mattersoftheheartradio.org. Let me know, what has God called you to? How can I encourage you? How can I pray for you? And would you consider sowing your own seed into the show today as the show airs all around the world at different times? Help me make a difference by taking this gospel and this encouraging word to people everywhere. It doesn't come for free. It all costs money. And together we can make a difference with it.
You've been listening to Matters of the Heart Radio Live. If you enjoyed listening to the show today, we ask that you support it with your gifts. The show could not be made possible without generous contributions from our community of faithful listeners, and in order to make it possible to remain on the air, we need your help. The show is made possible for you and with you, so please consider making a donation today. Please visit the show's website, mattersoftheheartradio.org, and click the donation button at the bottom of the homepage. Learn about partnership opportunities and corporate sponsorship with us to order a signed copy of Miss Wendy's book, Healing Waters. To schedule a counseling session with Ms. Wendy, go to refreshingtimescounselingcenter.com. Visit us on Facebook, and please don't forget to tune in next week with Ms. Wendy on Matters of the Heart Radio Live.